my town, there's this adorable little Bible bookstore that sells all different types of Christian books. I don't go here too much because they don't sell all of the mainstream books I usually buy for videos, but I love this store and I've always wanted to shop there more. So this week, I'm gonna be only reading books from this Bible bookstore no matter what I can find. Whether it's some kind of amazing Christian memoir or just cringy Christian fiction, I'm gonna read it all. My first shopping trip to the store was a little bit difficult because there was so much to choose from. I browsed through every corner of the store trying to decide what to get, but I kind of knew this would happen because before I went in, I told myself I didn't want to prepare or like pre-decide what I was getting. I've decided that I'm not gonna plan what I'm gonna get before I go to the store anytime I buy a new book. I'm just gonna let myself browse and pick out anything I feel like getting in the moment. They don't just have Bibles here, they have a ton of stuff from like commentaries and memoirs and fiction, and I want to get a variety of different books this week, so I'm gonna go browse around now and we'll see what I end up getting. I was really tempted to just run upstairs to their fiction section and get something, but like I said, I wanted a variety of books this week, and I wanted to save what I thought would be the best, the fiction book, for last. After a while of browsing, I finally found something interesting while looking through the commentary section, and after flipping through it, I decided this was definitely the book I wanted to start this challenge out with, so I bought it and brought it home. So the first book I got from the store is a commentary on the book of Esther. I've already started reading this a bit alongside the actual book of Esther in the Bible, and it's pretty good so far. There's a lot of really interesting information in here, and I also just really love the book of Esther, so this has been a lot of fun for me. Earlier I mentioned what I'm gonna do if I find 3 really good books this week. If by chance during this week I can find 3 good, high-quality books that I would proudly recommend to you, I'm gonna lengthen this challenge and only read books from this store for an entire month, which will be the first time in years I've gone an entire month without buying the popular books I usually get from Barnes & Noble, and honestly that scares me a little, but I'm up for the challenge. And I think I can pretty much go ahead and tell that this one is gonna be a really good one. I mean, it's a commentary. I think it would be hard to find a bad one, I think. I'm just a little bit worried about the next 2, especially when I eventually get a fiction book, which I plan to do at some point, because Christian fiction tends to be either really good or really bad, and there sometimes is very little in between. So even though I love fiction the most, I'm a little bit scared for that. I've been reading in this commentary for about 30 minutes. It is really good so far, actually. It talks a lot about how unique the book of Esther is because of 2 main reasons. Number 1 is that there's very few books of the Bible where a female is the main character, and what especially makes Esther unique is that she plays a really vital role in protecting all the Jewish people during this period of time. And then number 2 is that God is not mentioned in the entire book of Esther. But it's so cool how you can see him maybe even more clearly than other books that do mention him because of the way he's so clearly working. I also like that this book gives a lot of like little charts and like diagrams to help like visualize things and make things make more sense. So it's going really well so far. I'm going to take a bit of a pause and then I'll go back to this a little bit later. But so far, this one seems like it's going to be a good one. Because I'm going to be continuing to read this very slowly as I read the actual book of Esther, I think it's time to go back to the bookstore and buy my first like actual legit book I'm going to be reading throughout this week. I'm back at the Bible Bookstore. I read a little bit more of that Esther commentary. I'm not finished with it yet, but I'm going to keep reading through it as I read through the book of Esther. But I'm ready to go ahead and get something new to read now. So just like last time, I don't really have any plan of anything I want to get. I would love to get a Christian fiction, so we'll see what they have, but I kind of want to save that for last. And I really want to try to get different things as I go throughout the week, so who knows what I'll find in there. I'm just going to let myself browse and buy whatever I feel like, so let's go. Once again, this shopping trip was a bit of a struggle because I'm indecisive and I had no idea what I wanted to get. The issue was that 99% of the books in the store I had never even seen or heard of before, so it was really hard to tell what was good and what wasn't, and there was a little bit of pressure to find something good unless I wanted to shop here for a whole month straight. I was so close to buying this book that looked somewhat interesting until something else finally caught my eye, and after reading over the synopsis, I knew this was the book I wanted. I've gotten my second book now, so it took me a while to pick this one out because I was really in the mood for some kind of like memoir or biography or just some kind of non-fiction book. Again, I love fiction, but I've been wanting to try some different stuff out. And in this store, they have a very big section of books like these. So I stood in this section for a long time just browsing through almost every single book on that shelf. And there were several that looked good to me, but this one I decided to go with. It's called Between the Mountains and the Sky by Maggie Dane. I looked it up on my phone in the store, and apparently this is a very popular story. I think there's even a movie either made about it or going to be made about it. It's about a girl who visits Africa during her gap year before college. And it seems like while she's there, she falls in love with a lot of the children and then later goes to build an orphanage in this country or something like that. That's what I got from the synopsis. So I'm really, really excited to start this one. So I'm 5 chapters into Between the Mountain and the Sky, and this story is actually really like impressive to me so far. The main girl, I didn't realize, is only like 19, 20 years old when she starts all of this, and it seems like she just kind of randomly decides on a whim or just like through instinct that she wants to build an entire orphanage in a place in Asia. Earlier I said Africa, it's a place in Asia. And it's just kind of crazy to me because again, she's like 19, 20 years old, and it's just really impressive. Something else that I think is very interesting about the story is that before going into it, I thought it was going to be very much overtly Christian story with a lot of talk about God, which I would have enjoyed, but so far it's not really been mentioned too much throughout the story. I think the main girl is definitely a Christian, and I think she's mentioned him here and there, but it's definitely not an overly preachy book, which is what I think a lot of people expect books like these to be, especially when they come from a Bible bookstore. And honestly, that's kind of the way I expected it to be. But anyway, the book is really good regardless, and I'm super excited to read a ton today. It's the next day, and I am now halfway through Between the Mountain and the Sky. This book is actually so much more sad than I thought it was gonna be. It's happy and it's hopeful in some places, but there's a lot of places that are just kind of tough to read, which I feel like maybe I should have expected given like what the story is. I guess I just didn't really expect it, and some of the parts in this are really, really sad, but it also is good at the same time. Like, it makes the successes in the book so much better and so much more enjoyable, I guess, and I'm really liking it. Like I said before, I don't read a ton of nonfiction, but this one is really good, and it almost reads a little bit like fiction, so it's really good so far. Also, it's supposed to snow here this weekend, which is really exciting because it basically never snows here, so I'm very excited to potentially see it and get to walk around in it, but I'm even more excited for the possibility of having a very cozy indoor reading day with the pretty white snow outside. I feel like that's just the perfect reading setup, so I'm crossing my fingers that it does actually snow, and I'm so excited. Even though the story isn't like a fiction book with like a typical hero and a villain and like so many interesting plot points going on, it's still so interesting and like thrilling to read. There's so much going on, there's so many highs and so many lows. Even though it's nonfiction, it literally feels like it's a fiction book. I have now finished Between the Mountain and the Sky. This book, like I said, ended up being so much sadder than I thought it was gonna be. I think I said this before, but the sad parts made the successes of the story so much better. I think a huge lesson anyone could take away from this story is that a big thing that the author was saying towards the end is that you're never too young to start helping people, and even a little bit of effort can do so much good for so many people. It just felt very inspiring towards the end, and because this book was genuinely so good and I can highly recommend it to you all, that means I only need one more good book and I will be shopping at this Bible bookstore for a month straight. Still not sure how I feel about that. At first I didn't really want to. At first I thought it was going to be a really tough challenge, but the more I'm finding these good books, the more I'm open to it. Maybe it could be kind of fun to do this for a month. We will see. There's still one more book to go. Then I went right back to the store and finally let myself go to the upstairs section and look for a fiction book. Like I said, I was most excited for this section, but I was equally as nervous about it because Christian fiction tends to be a hit or a miss, so there was a lot of pressure to pick out a good one. So for my last book, I've decided to let myself read a fiction book now that I've done my due diligence at trying different genres at the store. Now, I've read enough Christian fiction to know that there's a lot of good ones out there, but there's also a lot of bad ones. So even though I've been the most excited to try this genre, I've also been the most worried about what I might end up with. So for any book that I was thinking about buying, I was really careful to read the entire synopsis and even the first couple of pages to see if the writing style was good. Anyway, when I was still in the car before going in, I had a thought that I'd been craving to read a good historical fiction again. I love historical fictions, but I haven't read any in a really long time. But I wasn't sure if a Bible bookstore would have many, and that's when I came across this book. It's called The Librarian of St. Malo by Mario Escobar. I definitely had seen this cover before, like I kind of recognized it, but I never really heard much about it. It takes place during World War II, and I love a good World War II historical fiction. And it's about a woman who tries to save her library, even though the Germans have come to her city in France and they're trying to destroy all the books, or something like that, it seems. And it just seems really good. It sounds like everything I've been like craving in a book lately, and I'm gonna start reading it today. I've read a little bit of this book so far. I'm not too far into it yet, but I am liking it. I think it's going to take a little bit more effort for me to really get into this one. But I will say a lot of this is what I've been looking for in a new book. It's like a good historical fiction, a fun story, and I'm also really, really liking this main character. So I'm going to be reading a lot of this today. Also, today is Thursday and the weather is currently saying that almost all day Saturday and some of the day Sunday it's gonna be snowing. If that actually happens, that means it's gonna be a lot of snow, and I, number one, can't wait to run around in it, and number two, can't wait to read this book in a cozy warm house while looking out the window at the snow. Knowing South Carolina, there's a good chance that this is gonna change and it's gonna end up being like 60 degrees and sunny all day. I should have a decent amount of this book left to read at that point, so I'm very, very excited. So I've also, throughout reading these other two books, have been continuing to go through this commentary. Something I've been thinking about a lot while reading through this, and it's kind of what I mentioned before, is how God is not mentioned at all in the book of Esther, and yet everything he's doing is so clear and visible, even though he's not mentioned or nobody talks to him, nobody really prays to him, and yet he's working so much through the book. And I was thinking it's very interesting how I kind of felt the same way with the Between the Mountain and the Stars book, because this was also a story where it was so clear that God was working and doing something in this person's life, and yet there wasn't a lot of mention about him, at least not until the very end when she started praying more. And then the book I'm reading right now, the librarian book, also isn't mentioning him a ton, even though I think that one isn't technically like a Christian book. I think it's just a PG book made by a Christian publisher. Anyway, I didn't pick these books out intentionally because of that. I didn't know anything about them. I didn't know they would be this way, but I think it goes back to my initial judgments with this Bible bookstore and thinking that, or at least I used to think that every book in it would be very preachy, very overly Christian, overly religious. But I think it's interesting that I coincidentally picked 3 books out that aren't like that at all, especially this book and the fiction book. I think what I was trying to say here was that most people, including myself, might think that books from a Bible bookstore wouldn't be fun or genuinely good stories because they might sacrifice the quality of a well-written story for the sake of being overly preachy. But as I read throughout this week, that was really proven wrong. And the more I started to really believe in the quality of books at this store, I became less and less worried about the possibility of me doing this for a whole month in the future. This book seems to keep just getting more and more intense and suspenseful as time goes on, and I love that in a book. I love when, as a story goes on, it just keeps getting better and better and better. I also didn't think that this was technically a Christian fiction book, but there are some mentions about this main character's faith, actually her lack of it. She's not really a believer, but I can assume she's probably gonna become one as time goes on, and I'm excited to see that progress. But it's also really subtle and not too in your face, but also still meaningful at the same time, so I'm really liking this one a lot. It's supposed to be snowing within the next few hours. Right now I'm not seeing anything, it's just a little bit cloudy, but it's supposed to be coming very soon. It's finally starting. We're seeing the first few flakes out there. It's very light right now, but it's supposed to get heavier and it's supposed to go basically all night. At least I hope so. It is beautiful out today. The snow is everywhere. It got super, super thick. We spent a lot of time outside just playing around in it. But now we've come inside and I'm ready to start reading. I am almost over halfway through this like 350, 60 page book. And so I'm hoping to just dedicate the rest of the day towards reading this, and maybe I'll be able to finish it today. It's the next day and I finished The Librarian of St. Malo. This book actually ended up being a pretty tough read. It felt like this person went through so many hardships. It was like one thing after another after another. But I also think that was really historically accurate with the place and the time she was living in. And I love when books like these are accurate to the struggles of the time, but also at the same time have some like light in them. And I feel like this one did that really well, especially with the main character. I feel like in the beginning of the book, she was a very timid and like fearful person. She relied a lot on her husband, but then as time went on and as she went through a lot of hard stuff, she slowly became stronger and braver and never really gave into her fears. She did like so much good for her library and for her city, and it was just a really great ending, although really sad at the same time, but like also good. I feel like that's how historical fictions, at least World War II historical fictions, tend to end. So it was like sad but good, but I really enjoyed the book overall. And because I would say all 3 of the books I read this week were successes, you know what that means. It's time to try shopping at the store for an entire month straight. I've already started my journey in reading all these books for a month. I have been filming it, so let me know if you want to see a full video on it. I will say that although this was supposed to be a super hard challenge for me, it's turning out so much more pleasant and easy than than I expected. And I think that's because although the books in the store might seem like they'd only be cringy and overly preachy, they really aren't. And there are some really amazing stories that are nothing like I've ever read before in any of my usual popular books I buy from Barnes & Noble. And the best part is that whether God is talked a lot about in the story or not, you can see him so clearly in every single book, which just makes each story that much better.